I want to recap for you a little bit about yesterday. What have we learned about digestion? It is probably the most important thing that you can do. Jim unpacked some amazing information for us. Please download his brain, okay? If you can do that, you will get well. I can't impress upon you enough, especially in the presentation of Lyme, that when you consider the fact that 85% of your immune system is built on the walls of your small intestine, don't you think we should pay attention to it? Right? And we should not be ignoring it. Louis talks a lot about genetically modified organisms. Is that my clicker there? Thank you. And let me tell you, one of the things that was discovered with GMO through the Environmental Academy of Medicine was that it causes damage in the small intestine and a faulty immune system. Those are two things that I was trying to recover from when I was trying to work through my Lyme disease. And that was one of the things, as you heard me talk last night in 2005, was when I started to learn about all of those things, like GMOs, okay? I didn't know what a GMO was from a WHO. I had no idea. And so then what I did was I spent 2 years unpacking my life and my refrigerator and all of my cabinets, okay? Because I had that standard American diet. Remember the Breyers ice cream, the Oreo cookies, and the Entenmann's, right? Get them out of your cabinet right now because they're killing you. I can promise you that they're killing you. So I spent 2 years correcting my digestion after 2005. If you remember from yesterday, that's when I stopped my treatment. I went to my Lyme doctor and I said, this is insanity. Why am I returning like a dog to its vomit, to doing another antibiotic, thinking that this is going to be the trick? In fact, I went to an international summit on Lyme, and the new drug at the time was called Ketec. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. And everybody couldn't wait to jump on the Ketec bandwagon. My husband turned to me and goes, what do you think? I said, you know what? When I get up in the morning and I look in the mirror, I do not see guinea pig. Okay? I do not see guinea pig. He goes, really? You're not going to take it? I said, really, I'm not going to take it. I'm going to wait a year. They had to pull it from the market because people were dying of liver failure. All right? So you are not guinea pigs, okay? And that's what you want to think about. If anybody here is from the pharmaceutical industry, I'm going to be slapping you right now. You are being used as guinea pigs. Nutrition and supplements are the things that are going to bring the greatest healing, aren't they? That's why on my, right? Amen. Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's why on my website and on my card it says, health begins in Genesis. God didn't make a mistake in our food. We made a mistake in thinking that we can make it better than God. That is where our failure came in. So when you start to take that food back down to the level of where it belongs, right, and you start to source out local farmers, of which I'm a local farmer, not to you guys, but I'm a local farmer to my friends in New Jersey and Philadelphia, you keep us in business and you will stay healthy. So that's what you need to do, is you need to source out food that is going to be nourishing to your body and not antagonizing. And I promise you, it was Yvette that said that, right? Nutrients are what are going to make you well, right? And she's a pharmacist. She knows. She knows what's going on. So I can't encourage you enough to walk through Genesis 1:29, to walk through Genesis 9:3, and now we have meat to eat, to study Leviticus, to understand why did God give us all of those laws, yet we are, although freed from them, but they are proven to keep us healthy. And then, of course, we have Jesus, right? Because we understand that sovereignty rests in his hands. And so that was my path. So in 2005, when I started on that food and digestion path, it wasn't exactly my healing moment. And you're thinking, what? She led us down this rosy path yesterday, saying if you fix your digestion, you can fix anything. I said, if you can fix the organs between your lower rib cage and the top of your hip bones, you will likely get well. Because guess what's connected back there? There are these little things called adrenal glands. Who knows where the adrenal glands are? Good, okay. Second most important organs behind, not organs, not the state, second most important organs that are related to health. They are critical. And so that, starting in 2007, was what I started to pay attention to. And I have to tell you something. I was just a housewife, okay? I didn't have all these letters after my name back then, but I had the Holy Spirit. okay? And I had the internet. Did you know that the internet is true? I'm just kidding. Please pray before you get on the internet, okay? But what I wanted to understand, what organ systems did I need to pay attention to? I understood that antibiotics destroyed the function of my small intestine, so I knocked those out, healed that. And then I started to think, what was the next thing that I needed to pay attention to evoke healing in my body? And that's when the Lord revealed to me these little adrenal glands. I had to get out an anatomy and physiology book. I didn't know where they were. I didn't know what they did. So that's what I started to focus on. That was the next journey. Because in 2007, I was relapsing, and I was relapsing badly. And this is how I know I started to relapse. My left thumb would start to twitch. And I can't even begin to tell you how devastating that was when that would happen. And so there I was. I'll never forget. I was sitting in front of my computer, just, doodling along, trying to figure out my next step in my journey. And I started going like this. I went, oh, I thought I'm not going to tell my husband. Maybe it was just like, maybe I overworked it or something. The next day, my legs were numb. The day after that, my arms went numb. 2 weeks later, I couldn't drive. And actually what had happened was I took my girls to a dance class an hour and a half away, and I dropped them off, and I pulled away from the house, and it was like I'd been transported into Kansas. I didn't know where I was. It took me 2 hours to find my way back. All right, let me tell you something. I know what Alzheimer's is like. It is a frightening experience. And I got back to them, and I said to my daughter, I said, Em, I'm a little tired. Could you just guide Mommy home? Because I didn't know where I was. And I got home, and I handed the keys to my husband. I said, I'm done. Something's wrong. I must be dying. I said, and then I started forgetting who people were. I could always remember my family. That's why I get emotional when I look at them. I always knew who they were. I didn't know who anybody else was. So that's where I was in 2007. So I found myself in my Lyme doctor's office, and we didn't even have to run blood work. We were running constant blood work called a Stricker panel. For those of you who are suffering under Lyme, there's a panel called the Stricker panel, which measures lymphocytes and white blood cell counts. So that was an important panel for me because we use that panel a lot of times to determine what was working. What we were finding was, in that span of time, is my lymphocytes were dropping 50% every 3 months with no recovery. Normally, I would have an 8 or a 15% recovery. Remember, my husband's a scientist. He's a little neurotic. I don't think he married me. I think he married a lab rat, but I'm not sure about that, okay? So he was measuring my lymphocytes. He goes, I think we're in trouble. I said, yeah, we're in big trouble. And my doctor said the same thing. I said, well, let me go in and talk to her and find out what's going on. So I sat down, and I looked at her, and I said, I think I'm in trouble. She goes, you're in big trouble, Liz. I said, what's happening with me? I said, is it possible that I could die from this disease? And she looked at me and she said, yes. And I knew that because her husband, who was a physician who practiced with her, had died 3 years previously of the disease. So I knew that that could happen. And I'm kind of a need-to-know person. I was like, okay, what am I going to die of? You got to tell me. I have to know. I've got to know. She goes, well, it could be one of two things. I'm like, okay, those don't seem like bad odds. She goes, well, you could go really quick, like an infection. I'm like, that would be good, right? Okay, wouldn't be traumatic. Or she goes, it could be really slow, like cancer. I thought, that's very bad. That's not how I want to go. Because when you have an immune system that doesn't function, what happens? You're at risk. You're at great risk. So we were heading for vacation, and I got in the car, and we were driving up to our house in Vermont, and my husband said, how'd it go? I said, I'll tell you later. And I just sat there, and I was like, I can't believe that I may not make it through this year. I'm not even going to see my children graduate. I won't even see them get married. That was a hard thing to do. So at the time, she gave me 2 experimental treatments. Remember the guinea pig thing? All right. One was called the vitamin C and salt protocol. I called that the bathroom protocol because you'll never leave it. The other one was called the Marshall protocol, where you had to inhibit any vitamin D coming into your body. I called that the mushroom protocol, and I rejected both. And I said to my husband, my life is now in the Lord's hands, and all we can do is pray. That doesn't mean that I hadn't been praying, but now we really needed to pray. And I closed my laptop, and I said, Lord, this is totally up to you now, how you're going to reveal to me how my life is going to play out, okay? And then I set time aside to start to prepare my girls for my loss. So one of the things that we did is, my husband being neurotic, I call him the owl, we sat down because we had been through multiple supplement companies, okay? How many people who've been chronically ill have been through a minimum of 4 supplement companies? 5, 6, 7, right? If someone told you when you're sick and someone tells you this is the way to go, you're going to do it, aren't you? And these people are very well-meaning, and it's not that they don't know what they're doing, and you're going to try it. But one thing I had never done was set aside a criteria. Why didn't I think about evaluating a supplement company? I don't know why I never thought about that. So Andy and I, we sat down, and I said, how do we evaluate a supplement company? And we came up with a 7-step criteria. And that 7-step criteria is on my website, Living by Nutrition. But basically, it unpacked supplements from 3 perspectives: ingredients, science, and financial health. All right? So I wanted to, because when I started to get a clue about what I was doing, I started to realize, what is going on? Am I taking synthetic supplements? How is my body handling these things? Are they really, am I having to work hard to overcome the synthetic parts of it? And where do these things even come from? Because remember, I had drilled down on where my food come from. I could shake every farmer's hand at that time, because at that time we were not raising our own food. We do now. But I had developed supply lines where I could shake every one of my farmers' hands and look them in the eye, and I knew how I was doing that. But I didn't know if I could do that with my supplement company. So we developed those criteria. My husband said, Andy said, he goes, you can take supplements. I stopped all supplements. What were they doing, right? My lymphocytes were dropping by 50% on the protocol I was on. Well, what's the point of continuing that mess? So I dropped those, and he said, you have to fulfill all of these steps. That is what I believe the Lord is telling us to do. So I thought, okay. So I flipped my laptop open, and I thought, well, I'll just Google around, and I would get to step 5. I get really excited, and I would get to step 5, and it would be like, no. And I would say, is it okay if we skip 6 and 7? He's like, no, you must have 6 and 7. I'm like, all right. So I would get to 6. And I'm like, can I skip 7? He would be like, no, you cannot skip 7. And I thought, okay. So I left it at that. And so I want you to hold on to that, because I'm going to talk about that, how I found GNLD. So keep that in the back of your mind. You can look that supplement criteria up. But one of the things that was really impressed upon me as I was waiting for the Lord to deliver Neolife, which I didn't know he was going to do, but he did, right? Because I'm standing here in front of you. I decided that I started to work on my adrenal glands. And here's what I want to show you. We know where they are. They balance more than 50 hormones in the body. They produce estrogen and progesterone after menopause. If you don't have strong adrenal glands, you're going to have a miserable menopause, okay? But the most important thing that I always was focusing on was to support the immune system. That's what I needed to do. What I'll be doing is putting this PowerPoint up on my website so you can access it next week. Okay, and the digestion one that I was supposed to do yesterday but didn't, that will also be up there as well. So you can have these. So don't worry about trying to scribble everything down. It'll be there for you. Here's symptoms of adrenal stress. It's a lot. I'm sure most of you will go, oh, chronic infection. Here's the thing about chronic infection and adrenals. What came first? Low adrenals, which caused your immune system to go down, which flipped you into a chronic infection? Or did you have a chronic infection which drained your adrenal glands down because of excessive cortisol production, right? So it's like this really bad rabbit trail that you get on. And it goes round and round and round until you can put a stop to it. And I knew that I was in this chronic cortisol. I knew that I had a real cortisol problem, which was draining, which was lowering my adrenal gland function and causing me to be in this inflammation, chronic infection wheel. But this is what I want to talk to you about, healing the adrenal glands. So that's, while I was waiting for Neolife to be delivered to me, that's what I decided to focus on. And the most important thing that I did was I went to bed. I went to bed. Yep. What I did was I moved to the 3rd floor of our house. We darkened out the windows because at this time I was really neurologically overstimulated. I had trouble walking. I couldn't stand bright lights, loud noises, or even the kids talking all at the same time. It was too much for me to process. And so we decided we had an apartment that we used for missionaries, furloughed missionaries in our house. And for the first time in 10 years, it was empty. It was never empty. I said, I'm moving up there because I just needed to separate myself from the family. We darkened in the windows, and I went to bed. I took my Bible, I took a journal, and I took Sudoku because I thought I was losing my mind. And I thought, well, maybe Sudoku will keep me focused. And there I laid. And I have to tell you something. It was an important time for me to do that because as I didn't know if I was going to live out that year. And if you're ever presented with an opportunity, I'm going to say it's an opportunity to maybe look at your life from a different perspective, It's a time for you to make right what you need to make right, to put to bed what needs to be put to bed, to get rid of the anger and bitterness. Maybe we should all practice dying once, right? I'm not kidding, because it really confronts you. When I work with my cancer patients, they are faced right away with dying, aren't they? And right away, we have to get into that rest. We have to find out, unpack their emotions. And I started to realize that there was a lot of things going on. So I want to share with you scripture, which I love. I guess you haven't figured that out yet, have you? Genesis 2:2 says, "By the seventh day, God completed his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done." Can I ask you something? Does God need to rest? No, he's huge, right? He fits the waters of the world in the palm of his hand. This is a man that doesn't have to do anything. So I had to think, why was that there? Why did he do that? Because he's giving us an example of what we're supposed to do. So we're going to attach that. The primary thing that heals the adrenal glands, the number one thing that heals them, is rest. Now remember, I wasn't a smarty pants back then. I'm still not a smarty pants. I have the same Holy Spirit that you have. But I learned that one of the things that I needed to do was to rest. And so what I want to read to you is I want to read you the Hebrew word of rest in Genesis 2:2. That is the first time that we see rest. It's from the Hebrew word sabbat, or Sabbath. If anybody there who knows the Bible better than mine, am I pronouncing it correctly? What is it? Shabbat? Thank you. I do it wrong every time. Thank you very much. This is a verb, folks. All right? A lot of times we think verb must be passive and it's something we do when we fall over. All right? That is not active. It's a verb meaning to repose, to rest, to rid of, to still, to put away, to leave. Most often, the word expresses the idea of resting, abstaining from labor. It is from the root word that designates a time to be set aside for rest. This is active, isn't it? Healing, as you know, requires a lot of activity. You might be juicing. You might be exercising gently. You might be intentionally trying to sit out in the sun, right? Rest is part of that. We don't do that. And this is something that you need to remind yourself as you're working with people. Not resting and taking supplements is a medical paradigm. It's like taking an antibiotic and going to work. It needs to be included in what you are doing. It is also a time that he desires for his people in order that they may live lives pleasing to him, full of worship and adoration. So that was a very significant time for me that I laid in bed, and it wasn't for one day, it wasn't for 1 week, it was for almost 9 months. I came down once a day to check on my kids to make sure they hadn't killed each other. They were fine, and to make sure everything was okay on the farm. I ate a little bit, and I went back to bed because that's all I could do. And a lot of it was just resting. But what I also did was I checked myself for emotions of bitterness, anger, unforgiveness, victimization, you name it, put a label on it, journal it, take it before the Lord, because that is a rich time that he is giving you, and I didn't want to squander any time. When you're faced with a dead end, and first of all, how dare doctors tell you how long you're going to live? Who do they think they are? God? I'd say they're more like dogs, okay? I mean, I just couldn't believe that some doctor would say to me, you have a year. All right, because literally they have done studies when the doctors have said you have 3 months, and the people die at 3 months. They die at 3 months. And that's what happens. And I was a little upset by that, but nevertheless, I thought this is the time that I'm going to use to unpack my life and make sure that I have dotted my I's, crossed my T's, and I'm not leaving anything behind. So take that to heart as you're working with people or even your own health. Take time to rest. I can't even begin to tell you. I'm not even going to unpack all of these things. It would take too long. Again, it will be on my website. Fairly explanatory in terms of what you need to do. But the other important thing was circling the wagons, all right? To leave, to rid of, dispose could be taking out people, situations in your life that are not helpful to your healing. And my family, as you can see, is one of the most important things to me, and that is all who I saw for all of those months. And it's not that I had toxic people around me, I just didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear, are you going to live? Are you going to die? What are you going to do? You know, I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to listen to it. So I said to people, I said, you know what? If I live, you'll see me. And if I don't, you'll see me. You can come to my funeral, okay? And I just left it at that. So there's some really important things in there. If you have any questions, you can please come back and see me. So how did I find Neolife? You're wondering, aren't you? Right? Well, my daughter wanted to be in a movie called Come What May. It was actually a Christian movie about abortion. And she wanted to be an extra. She's not an actress or anything, but she just wanted to have the opportunity of doing it. And she said, Mom, can we go down for that? I said, well, you know I can't drive. And you know I can't stand. And you know I really can't do anything. But she goes, well, I can drive you down there. Because she was still under the age of 18 and needed a guardian. She goes, but when we get down there, my sister lived down there. She goes, you can stay with Auntie Suzanne, and I'll just go over. I said, okay, that will work. But what we didn't know was that she had to have a guardian on site because of her age. What I didn't know, and she was begging me to go, is that she'd worked it out with the director and the executive producer to get me in the movie, so that after I died, she could play the movie and see me. Little sneak, yeah. So she says, Mom, you have to be there. You have to go, please. And so I kept wondering why. They'd be like, Mrs. Moore, could you please get up and walk through the door? I'm like, okay, I'll walk through the door. Like, Mrs. Moore, could you please do it again? Are you kidding me? Am I doing it wrong? Right? Okay, I'll do it again. I'll do it again. You know, that's it, folks. That was the limit of my acting. It was 11 seconds, but I'm in there, okay? If you see the movie, it goes really fast. And they had a chair for me, so I'd sit down, I'd get back up. I'm like, can't we do this in a one-take thing? So as I was there, I thought, well, I might as well get lunch. And then we had a conversion van, so I could go lay down and spend the rest of the day there. She was fine. She was doing her thing. So I got into a lunch line. And I was standing in the lunch line waiting, and there was a woman in front of me excitedly talking to a young man. Now, this was done at a college, at Patrick Henry College in Virginia, excitedly talking to this young man about immune system. Now, remember, I closed my laptop months before and said, Lord, you're going to have to do this for me. So she's talking, and I'm following behind her like this, because I don't like to interrupt a conversation between two people because it's intimate and I think it's rude. After a while, I decided to be rude. And I was like, tap, 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 tap. And she's like, oh, yes. And her name was Susan Adams. She's my upline. I wish she were here. I love her so much. And she turned around. I said, may I please listen in to what you're saying? She said, of course. And I said, what are you talking about? So she and I and this young man were talking as we got through the lunch line. And then we sat down to have lunch together. And of course, aren't her supplements the best? Right, of course. Do you think I believed her? No, I didn't believe her, because I pulled out of my purse, which I kept with me, my husband's criteria of evaluating supplement companies, and I slid it across the table to her, and she says today, she goes, Liz, I was breaking out in a sweat. She goes, I had never had anybody do that to me. And I'm like, I really like you. I think you're a great lady, and I would love to have lunch with you again, but I can't take your supplements unless it goes through all of these steps. And she went, I think we can do that. I'm like, you think you can do that? She goes, yeah, I think we can do that. I said, well, you're going to have to prove it to Andy. And if you can prove it to him, then it's a go. So she gave me some Don Lawson CDs to listen to. Isn't he amazing? Do you miss him? I never met him. I miss him. He was an amazing man. My daughter and I were listening to him on the way back from Virginia, and she goes, Mom, he's such a nice man. I'm like, he died 2 years ago. She went, oh. I'm so sorry. Can we listen to him again? It felt like we had our grandfather in the car. He's an amazing man. What a gift. He left such a gift. Every one of you have the same opportunity to leave that gift behind. So anyway, so she slid that across. I slid that across. I got the information. I took it home to my husband. And we own an international chemical company, and so we have a massive research facility in New Jersey. What else do you do in New Jersey but make chemicals, right? Okay? You'll have to forgive me for this. So he went in and he met with our PhDs in our research facility, and he said, can you please unpack for me this clinical data, all of this data? Is this peer-reviewed? Is this good, strong science? And these guys were like, yeah, this looks really good. He goes, they said I would go for it. Meanwhile, I was drilling down on the ingredients. And I was also looking at the financial health of a company. I have a financial management background. I sold a company in '93. I was a financial management consultant. And one of the criteria that was important to me was I was not going to work for a company that was on the NASDAQ board. Because why?
Controlled by the shareholders.
Exactly. They are more concerned about their shareholders than they are their end users. I was so glad to see Jerry's face there. I was like, this is great. And also, and the funny thing was, they were formed in the same year that our company was. I'm like, oh, I like that. That's kind of nice. As I said, Roger, we had this little competition with Roger about how many countries we were in. So it took us, Andy and I, 3 days to drill down on this. So like a good husband that he did, he sent me off for blood work, so he knew where my lymphocytes and my white blood cell counts were. I was still in bed. Nothing really had changed with my health. And I called my upline, and her upline was Marjorie Clark. Everybody knows Josh Clark, right? You should know Josh by now. This is his mom. She's a doll. I love her. So she said, so the two of them put their heads together, and they developed this protocol. Okay, and I started taking it. That protocol is on my website. It is too big to unpack. Maybe, can you pull my website up? Would that be possible? Might not be, huh? Okay, it's huge. Jerry Brassfield likes to joke that I took everything but Pet Pal, and that's true. But if Susan Adams and Marjorie Clark had told me that Pet Pal would have worked, I would have bought a case, all right? Okay, so when I tell you I took everything, and I took things in what's called therapeutic amounts. There's something called orthomolecular nutrition. I know Jim knows a lot about that, don't you, Jim? Yep, it's called therapeutic dosing of vitamins, and that is what I did. And I took massive amounts of these. So we drew my blood work. I started taking these supplements by cereal bowls. I had 3 cereal bowls. It cost about $700 to $800 a month at wholesale. The joke in my family was that I made myself my own director. Okay? It can happen. You too can be your own director. And the cases were rolling in. I got to be really good friends with my UPS driver. So they started coming in, and my first blood draw, that was January, February, March. Okay, it was January 8th, we drew blood. March 4th, I tried to keep it right around the same time as my next blood draw. And although I wasn't feeling 100% better, I was starting to feel something. And I will tell you, when I first started taking them, I felt like garbage. I was so sick. And Andy was like, should we stop them? I'm like, no, something's happening. Something happening is better than nothing happening. I said, I think it's good that I feel really awful. And I felt really awful for 10 days. I had fevers, I was vomiting, I was a mess. But I thought, well, I'm going to try it. It's not going to kill me, right? Throwing up doesn't kill you, so I'm just going to keep going at it. So we did my blood work, and I had a 150% increase in my lymphocytes. I had never gotten more than an 8% increase. Never, ever, in all the studies that we had done. Yeah, it's under, would be under Lyme, and they're under testimony. And you can find, thank you very much for doing that. So when that came back, Andy was like, this is great. Is there anything else you can take? Call Susan. So then instead of ordering by single bottles, the cases started rolling in, and I got even friendlier with my UPS driver. And over the next 2 months, so that I did it at 3 months, we decided to do another study on July 4th, and my lymphocytes went up 150%. I was out of bed. I was out of bed for the first time. Remember, I went to bed in July. I got out of bed in July, almost a year later. I was pretty weak because I didn't have a whole lot of muscle tone, but I was alive. Isn't that amazing? It really is. I think it's on the bottom if you scroll up. It should be on the bottom of that. And there's the list. Wow. Yeah. It was amazing. And just like you were saying about that young man that you were talking about, sending a ton of stuff, you do. If you are immunocompromised and you have had a lot of problems, you are going to need a lot of supplements. And you're just going to have to impress upon these people to just do it. Fortunately, my husband is extremely generous, and he said, whatever it is, just spend it. Just spend it. He goes, just do it. And it worked out beautifully to do that. So that's the protocol that I took. And that would be the protocol that I would recommend. And in some cases, yeah, that was it. That was a lot. That was enough. Don't you think that was enough? If Trey had been out, I would have taken Trey too, but Trey wasn't out at that time. But what I want you to understand is that healing comes in 2 perspectives, doesn't it? I made the change in nutrition, I paid attention to organ systems that needed to be paid attention to, and then the magic happened. And that was really through the neo-life. So you have to be careful in not developing a medical paradigm and just taking the supplements and living your life like nothing else is going on. There are a lot of things that you need to do. If someone you're working with or you yourself are chronically ill, all of the things have to be addressed. That's why I named my company Living by Nutrition, because I believe that we need to stand on Genesis 1:29 first. And that's a perfect example of what Louis teaches in his classes, right? The juicing. And he talks about all of the nutrition, right? You are helping your downline to develop a foundation that when these supplements hit, they don't have to work to overcome your lousy diet, right? They are free to do what they need to do and provide the healing that you need to have. And that's exactly what I did. I'll have to tell you something. I went back to see my Lyme doctor, and we had some big argument over thyroid medication. I think she was just mad that I lived. And she kicked me out of her practice. Yeah, sometimes they're just not grateful. Who was it who said your doctors don't want to see you again? Who was that? Somebody said something funny like that. Yeah, she didn't want to see me again. She said, I don't want to see you again. I was like, why? Because you like to keep all of your patients in bondage to antibiotics? You don't want to hear what I have to say? She said, no, I don't want to hear what you have to say. I said, okay. I said, that's fine. And I see her at conferences, and she acts like she never knew who I was. Well, I do think I look really good. I look much different than I did 10 years ago. Thank God for this list. So that, my friends, is what you need to do, okay? So you need to pay attention to digestion. You need to pay attention to your adrenal glands. You need to take the right and appropriate supplements that you need to take that's going to bring the healing. And then you need to give the rest to the Lord because he is fully and completely in charge of what we do. And so every day before I come up to speak, I ask, Lord, please make me a vessel for you. Because I want to show that whatever it is that I have done is only through his power and through his grace and through his mercy is the reason why I'm here. And I'm so grateful, and I want to thank Louie for inviting me out here. It was a blast. It never occurred to me that you guys weren't in my line. Because I look at you as all my friends. Isn't that crazy? Somebody said it to me. Are you in Louie's line? I went, no, I'm not. But I love you anyway. God bless.